Change your diet, change your life, change the planet.
As you can probably see behind me, winter came back last night. It was in the very low single digits, and right now it's about 8 degrees Fahrenheit, and bodies of water froze over. And winter came back in my life last night as well. And as I'm running by this pond, I was thinking about ice and freezing, and what that means to water, and what that means to human beings. And something occurred to me. In a sense, this layer of ice is protecting the water underneath and all the living creatures underneath from the intense cold that's coming down, because cold air sinks, hot air rises. So as the cold air sinks down, the water forms this layer of ice to keep the water underneath above freezing, so that fish and other plants can survive the winter. Now, normally the way things work, when something is a gas, it has very little density, and then when it condenses into a liquid, it has greater density, and then when more pressure is applied, or less heat, it gets even more dense and becomes solid. But water doesn't do that. When water becomes solid, ice, it's actually less dense than liquid water, which is why it floats to the surface. If water was more dense as a solid, it would freeze on the bottom of the pond first and then freeze all the way up, and life would not be possible. We would not be here if ice was denser than liquid water. And the reason that ice is less dense is that water molecules are very active. They're moving around, they're bouncing, they're touching each other, they're, hanging out, saying, hey, what's going on? Pushing back and forth. And it's this interactivity, it's this flexibility of the bonds that allows it to be a liquid. But when water cools in temperature and approaches ice, the bonds between the molecules start to straighten out and stiffen. And as they straighten out, they don't allow for that flexibility anymore. So other water molecules can't push around and bump into each other, because when they're bumping into each other, they can get close. But as those bonds straighten out, the molecules can no longer get close to each other, and they form this crystal structure with these extended arms, these extended bonds, which keep them at a distance. And this is why ice is less dense than liquid water, because they're keeping the other molecules at a distance. They're straightening out their arms and saying, keep your ground, don't come too close. Whereas liquid water allows for that interactivity. And what's happened to me is that so many people have wanted to now come into my life due to the videos that I'm making. So many people want to bump up against me and interact with me and be friends with me or run with me or do projects with me, businesses, or they want me to coach them, whatever it is. There's all this interaction, all this bumping, people bumping, and it's getting really dense. And I can't handle it. It's too much. I need it, I want it, I crave it, but it's too much. So last night, in the middle of my panic and breakdown, and as I started to withdraw and pull back, my bonds started to straighten out, and they started to tense up. And I'm now keeping you at a distance, not because I don't like you, not because I don't want to interact with you, but because I can't. It's just too much, and it's starting to shut me down and actually put me into a deeper depression. So I've formed a protective layer of ice over me. Because when I'm wet, you can fall into me, you can fall into my pond, you can make splashes, you can make ripples, you can affect me. You can become a part of me as you enter into my water and are submersed in my wetness. But when I form that layer of ice, which is what a depression is, I'm protecting myself so that you can't interact with my truth anymore. My truth is underneath. My truth is the water that's still liquid underneath that layer of ice. I have pulled back underneath this protective layer, protecting my truth and not allowing you to get too close. And as I look at this ice, it just really makes me think that's what a depression is. It's a protective layer where we're putting out our arms outstretched and saying, keep your distance, and we're forming this solid which floats to the surface, this solid protective layer, which is slippery. So that when the slings and arrows and everything else comes at us, it just glances off and slides. It doesn't enter into us. It doesn't penetrate us. Negativity just slides over the surface, but then so does positivity. And that's what depression is. It's a slippery, hard, protective layer that we form so that the world just slides over our surface and can't interact with us, can't hurt us anymore. But we really can't interact with it anymore either, because it slides away. Everything that comes at us just slides over our surface. People come into my life and they just slide right out of it because they don't know how to interact with me. They see my shiny surface, but they can't get in. They see the truth underneath, but they don't know how to get to it. So I'm going through my own personal winter right now. And I apologize if you want to get underneath and get access to my truth. In my life right now, it's 8 degrees. And if it reaches 0, I die. Most of you are out there living life at 75 degrees in sunny Southern California. And you're just buoyant and joyous, and you can't wait to interact with people. You can't wait to bounce off of other people, bounce off of other molecules, bounce ideas, interact. I can't do that right now because it's 8 degrees. And if I keep letting you bounce into me, you're going to push me down to 0 and I'm going to die. So I'm standing my ground and I'm building that protective layer of ice. And you're just going to slide across the surface, and I'm sorry. But it's what I have to do right now. I'm going to continue making my videos, but I have to protect myself because it's gotten cold. The more of you that approach me with positivity, the lonelier I feel. So sometimes you need to build that protective layer. Depression is not a bad thing. Depression is a way to protect you from the world. It's a way to protect you from being overwhelmed. It's a way to protect you from too much. But unfortunately, if that layer of protection becomes too thick, it can also kill you. Because you'll freeze solid all the way to the ground. And all the life underneath will die. So don't worry if you have that protective layer. But make sure that you're nurturing the life underneath. Make sure you're exploring possibility inside that life underneath. Okay? I love you.